Welcome back to our channel. If you've watched any of these previous videos, it's where Emily takes questions that you guys have asked us or questions that we get in our comment section all the time about short-term rentals, and we just rapid fire answer them. So this is another one of those, so let's get into it. I was so intimidated about hot tubs in general, and they ended up being 10x easier than I thought they were going to be. We do not drain them after every single guest. I know some people do, but it is literally not feasible for us at all. It requires 4 hours to completely drain and refill, and then it requires another like 6 hours for that water to heat back up. So we clean it after about every 4 guests. We'll drain it. Whenever we have an orphan day, we clean the hot tub. In between cleanings, we have a list of about 6 chemicals that we put 2 ounces of each chemical in there, and then we have a pool vacuum. The pool vacuum takes out all the dirt and debris without taking out the water. We have a scum sponge, I guess you could call it, that collects all the lotion that's on people's bodies that get in the hot tub. And we also have a slow drip chlorine system called the Frog system. But you can find literally everything we use on our Amazon storefront, and it takes our cleaners about 20 minutes to clean the hot tub in between typical cleans, and then about 4 hours on those orphan days when we completely drain it and refill it. So especially with our lakefront property, that sound travels very quickly across the lake. When we were living on the lake, anytime our neighbors were having a bonfire, we could literally hear their entire conversation. So we put on our house manual or our housekeeping rules that quiet hours start at 10 o'clock. We let them know that that sound carries very easily, and to be cognizant of our neighbors. Our neighbors have small children, and although they are pro Airbnb, thank goodness, we like to be respectful. Also, we made sure to put the hot tub in a section that is underneath the deck, so it kind of absorbs that sound that's happening when people are, you know, having a lively time in the hot tub. But just reiterating it a few times as they're checking in with those housekeeping rules that our curfew for sound is at 10 p.m. it's done its job. We haven't had any complaints. We reinvest 100% of what we earn from Airbnb properties back into more properties. Our finances in particular are structured where we live on my husband's income, and we reinvest every single dollar that we make on Airbnbs into new properties. I know that's not the case for everyone, but especially at the beginning, as many dollars that you can reinvest as possible is going to make a massive difference on how quickly you get a robust portfolio that's replacing an entire income. Such a good question, and it is case by case, and this is something that I am learning very intimately currently in this phase of partnerships that we're going through. You have to understand the value of what you are bringing to the table, whether that be sweat equity or capital. You have to understand where that's valued with your partner. For us, there are a few things that we're working on where we have multiple partners, so it's not just 2, and then there are other situations where there's only 2 of us. There's no real black and white answer, but you know, in a very basic sense, you want to be as close to 50-50 as possible when it comes to both sweat equity and capital if you're splitting the entire thing 50-50. When you get into something larger, you'll have general partners and limited partners. Typically, in what I'm used to, the limited partners are bringing the capital, the general partners are bringing the sweat equity and less capital, and they are in control of the daily operations. So I don't have a very direct answer. It is deal by deal, and you just need to make sure you understand monetarily what the value you're bringing is worth. Because I'm a bad investor. I feel like for Emily and I specifically, we became investors because we had to work with the people and truly understand the people that we associate with in the space. For us, this has always been about things outside of investing, and investing has been kind of a Velcro portion to this that, you know, we weren't necessarily anticipating. But for us, the 2 drivers have always been freedom of time and honestly freedom of creativity. And so for us, it's very easy for us to stay in the most profitable months of the year because it is the best time of year, and we wanted this to increase our quality of life. And for us, these properties we're pouring our heart and soul into, they are perfectly curated for what we want it to be. And so for us to give up spending the most ideal time there together and fellowshipping with our friends and our family seems insane, although it's a bad investor move. It depends on how your property functions. So for us, with arbitrage and with the lake house, there's kind of 2 different strategies here. At the lake house, it gets booked much further in advance, and so we put a really high nightly requirement when it's over 3 months out when they're booking it. So we're prioritizing people who want 7 days or longer so that we're booking up those weekdays and we don't end up with vacant Mondays through our most profitable season. Whereas with the arbitrage properties, they function a lot more like hotels. So it really comes down to price point and competing against your direct competitors. So with those properties, it's about like watching what other people are charging, being super plugged in with price labs and adjusting those prices so you're getting those last minute deals, because that's what it is to fill up those weekdays, is last minute bookings. Yes, that's kind of a difficult question to answer as well. When I think of like budgeting for off-season, I guess I would be under the impression that someone is assuming that we're not making enough money to pay for all of our expenses. And that's not the case at all. I mean, even in our slowest seasons, we're still making over $2,000 profit in the muddiest season of spring that Michigan has. So, you know, it's not so much for budgeting for it, it's just understanding that if you're walking into a new project, your cash flow is a lot lower in those seasons to be able to reinvest that money. But I mean, just on a macro scale, you should always have at least 3 months of your bills stored away. So should you run into another COVID situation, you've got some padding so you can think clearly and you're not in panic mode immediately. We do not currently do direct bookings. We are currently planning on opening up that portion. You know, the lake house was our first purchased property, and arbitrage was never something that we wanted to grow at scale. So up until this point, it hasn't made a ton of sense to invest in a direct booking website because we've collapsed almost everything that's been in Fort Worth. And now we're at a point where we're building that really solid, long-lasting foundation. With that being said, we only have one lake house. So now that that lake house is up and running, we are absolutely exploring a direct booking website because we don't want to be 100% reliant on Airbnb or on VRBO. We had a conversation with Boostly last week, and even he said that it's, you know, just as bad to have 100% traffic just coming from direct bookings as well. So it really is about kind of spreading your reach and having, you know, different funnels bringing in traffic from different areas. So shorter answer is yes, longer answer is why it hasn't happened so far. A lot of people get anxious about this, about people using their stuff. And so when we first started arbitrage, we were renting out our apartment that we were living in. And so what we did is, one, we were totally fine with people using any of the community stuff, like our pots and pans. We bought a whole new set of sheets, new pillows, things like that. But we just were super intentional about putting locks on the closets that had our personal belongings in it. And, you know, with Airbnb, they don't need a walk-in closet for a weekend, right? They need a luggage rack for a weekend. And so we just swapped the locks out on our closet doors to where they were key entry only, and then eventually we switched it to code entry only. And so it's super common for you to have closets for yourself and closets for your cleaners that your guests just don't have access to. It can be so difficult. So photographers and videographers are so important. I do a lot of research on the front end before I decide on a photographer and a videographer. And what I'm looking for is someone who understands exposure. I want to be able to see what's happening outside of the window as long as clearly see the design on the inside. You've got to have both. And so for me, I've had a lot of luck stalking other Airbnbs in my area and finding some that are really well photographed, reaching out to that host and asking them if they would extend their photographer's information, or just going down a rabbit hole of Googling real estate photographers in my area and looking at their portfolios online, because typically a photographer has a portfolio online, so I'm just paying close attention to what they've done in the past. That is it for today. I hope you guys found value in these questions. If you have any other questions you want us to answer, drop them in the comments below and we will add them to our next video, and we will catch you next time. Bye.